ACT and GPA are taken into consideration on the FAFSA. All right, this is a myth. There is no place that they put academic merit into the FAFSA. So it does not matter what their ACT or their GPA is for them to be eligible for federal aid. Now, they have to maintain satisfactory academic process, SAP, while they're in college. But to initially get it, there's no ACT or GPA. So that's something that's encouraging if you've got a student that's stressing about that. Next question. The FAFSA needs to be completed every year. Fact, myth? Every year, it has to be renewed that the student is going to be in college. So that username and password, that FSA ID that you all maybe are currently having them create in the class or have had them create, or maybe you have one as a parent or a borrower yourself, that stays with them through their entire college experience. So if in 10 years they go to grad school, they got to renew the FAFSA for that. So while they're in undergrad, they have to renew it every year after October the 1st. Students who live with grandparents use their grandparents' tax information on the FAFSA. Fact or myth? This is a myth. So we were literally split down the middle here. So the 16 of you that said myth, great job. What you need to know is that a student can only use on the FAFSA their self information and biological or adoptive parent or only student info. So either student plus biological or adoptive parent or only student. Never can a grandparent be used, never a legal guardian, never a sibling, never anybody else but a biological or adoptive parent. Live by that. That is going to be complicated for your students, but will help them in the future in case they have verification. Use the parent who claimed the student on their 2020 tax return. Fact or myth? All right, the three of you that got this right, great job. So this is one of the largest myths when it comes to the FAFSA. And I, as a former admissions counselor, may or may not have told the alternative fact of this and told students, oh, who claims you on the taxes is who you use. And that's not true. If a student's parents are not married to each other, it is a student they live with the majority of the time in the past 12 months. So sometimes with the divorce decrees, you'll see every other year a claiming of a student, but the student lives with mom the majority of the time. It's mom's information that's used. The only time that we care about claiming is never, okay? So tax return claiming never matters. When a student asks you, well, whose information do I use on the FAFSA? Your immediate response should be, well, who do you live with? And if that's a parent, that's that parent's info. If that's a grandparent, we got to figure out other ways to figure out parent, and you're going to learn that in FAFSA training. So no, tax return claiming never matters. It's a myth. All right, legal guardian's information is never used on the FAFSA. Fact, myth? Thank you to the 18 of you that was listening to me earlier when I told you legal guardian is never used on the FAFSA because we only use who? Biological, adoptive, parent, and student, or student only. If a student is in a legal guardianship, they are independent on the FAFSA and only student information. Okay. All right, a student is independent on the FAFSA if they file their own taxes and are not claimed by anyone. Fact or myth? All right. Tax return claiming never matters. What never matters? Tax return claiming. I can see all of your mouths mouthing that back to me. Okay. It never matters who claims the student on taxes. If they claim themselves, it doesn't matter. What matters is that if a student can say yes to one of those dependency questions that you're going to learn through College Academy, but it's essentially if they're 24 or older, married, have a child, have been in the military, are a veteran, have been awarded the court, dependent, orphaned, in foster care, in legal guardianship, or an emancipated minor, or at risk of being homeless. So if any of those life scenarios they can say yes to, then they are independent. Other than that, they got to use biological or adoptive parent. Last question. The FAFSA does not award any financial aid money. Fact or myth? This is a fact. So someone tell me what the FAFSA stands for. What are those words? What's the acronym stand for?
The application for financial aid. No, financial student aid.
Yeah, so it's the free application for federal student aid. But the most important thing are the first two words. It's free, and it's what? It's an application. All right. So the FAFSA doesn't actually do anything. It's the colleges that do all of that. So the FAFSA doesn't award any money. It's the colleges that award money, right? The application, just because y'all applied for something doesn't mean that you're going to get it. It's you're putting yourself out there in hopes that you do. Same thing for this. And a lot of people and a lot of students are like, the FAFSA didn't give me any money. Well, duh, the FAFSA doesn't do anything. It's the colleges that award that. So oftentimes when students or parents are apprehensive about the FAFSA, that's what you need to tell them. We're just applying in hopes that you can be awarded grants or aid from the schools. All right, great job to our winners. Yay, great job, everybody. All right, so that is our last Kahoot for the day. So we are going to be FAFSA experts by the end of this. We've kind of touched on some of those myths. Know that your students need to complete it. And one of the really great things when they do that is they can actually link directly from the FAFSA to the Mississippi financial aid application on the confirmation page. I will tell you guys two things. One, if you do a FAFSA today, it's glitchy. Like if you've been doing the FAFSA, if you have seniors right now, it's like really not working very well. Like the application itself is very glitchy. So if you have issues, you can contact me. I can talk you through some troubleshooting tips. So don't get frustrated. Just know that every October it doesn't work well, but by November it should be good. The second thing is FAFSA simplification is coming. So I told you those things as facts and myths. But in the future, in 2024, it's totally going to be different. So we're going to revisit that. Don't worry. I'll retrain all of you on the correct FAFSA info that's coming. That's taking it from 106 questions down to 108 to 36. So that's good. So the Mississippi Financial Aid, there are 3 grants. MTAG, 15 on the ACT, 2.5 GPA. Does anybody know the monetary amount a student can get per year freshman year for MTAG? Somebody unmute themselves and tell me.
500, I think.
$500 a year freshman year, $500 a year sophomore year, $1,000 junior, and $1,000 senior. What is the one thing about MTAG that you need to know that your students can't get it if they are
Pell Grant recipients?
Yeah.
Max Pell? They can get partial Pell. So if your students are getting like 1,000 in Pell, they can still get MTAG. But if they're getting that 6,495, they can't, even if they have the ACT score. All right, MESG, Mississippi MS Scholars Grant, 29 on the ACT, 3.5 GPA. How much is that per year? How much do they get? $2,500, $2,500 a year up to 4 years. All right, HELP grant. You already know this answer, so I'm not going to ask it. It covers tuition and fees for 4 years at any public college or university. So if they go to a community college, it covers for 2 years. They transfer to university, 2 years there, 4 years in university. The way it works for private colleges, does anybody know what amount that it covers for private colleges? Okay, I don't expect you to. It's the average tuition at the IHL colleges. So the average of the public 4 years. So right now, like I said earlier, that's like 8,500 and applies it to tuition at the private universities. 20 ACT, 2.5 GPA, has to complete the CPC requirements and has a household income. Does anyone know what that household income threshold is for the HELP grant?
38,000 or 39,000?
39,500 a year. If it's just one child. Now, if there are more than one children in the household, that threshold of 39,500, it increases. So they get an increase to 5,000 per additional child. All right. So if there's two younger siblings under the age of 21, then it is now 49,500 adjusted gross for the 2 years ago. So 2020 household income for the parents. One of the things is that the deadline is much earlier. So MTAG and MESG's deadline is September 15th after they graduate, as we saw in our important dates earlier. MTAG and MESG have a lot of time. HELP grant is March 31st of their senior year. Students can only apply for a HELP grant and receive it 2 times in their life. One as a senior in high school and one as a freshman in college. So if you're looking at this and you're like, I don't want to acknowledge this, but I'm going to Kirsten, that I have some students that should have got it last year, but I didn't know about it and they just graduated. How am I going to help them? Don't worry, you can still help them. They need to complete their FAFSA and they need to complete their MAP application now before March 31st as a freshman in college. And they can get it for their sophomore, junior, and senior years. Okay. They can get it up to 4 years, and it has to be within essentially the 2 years after graduating high school. So unfortunately, adult students can't come back and get the HELP grant. It's only for those students that get the HELP grant graduate at a graduation rate that's astounding for low income students. And so they graduate at like a 80% rate, while most of their students graduate at like a 60% rate. The HELP grant actually has to stack with Pell Grant. So you can get full Pell and the HELP grant together. And as we saw in our Elijah earlier with that 15,000, that's how you can substantially cut down the cost of schools. Any question on any of the 3 grant programs from the state of Mississippi?
Kirsten, if 1 year or last year their parents were laid off and they had no income or low income and they qualify for the HELP grant, do they get it for 4 years? What if they make 90,000 the next year?
So that's a really good question. They have to renew it every year. And so unfortunately, if that income threshold goes above within their 4 years in college, they won't get it for that next year. But because they have to renew the FAFSA and the Mississippi Aid application every year, it may be that they get it for 2 years, not 1 year, and then the last year. So if during COVID they didn't have employment, they could get it maybe freshman year and maybe sophomore year. But if it goes back up to 90,000, they won't get it for that year that tax year was high. Another thing about this is they have to maintain that GPA while they're in college that you see on the screen. So the students have to maintain a 2.5 GPA for MTAG and HELP and a 3.5 for MESG. And the schools themselves report that. So I cannot tell you if it's cumulative or semester GPAs. It's whatever the college reports to Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. They do get grandfathered back though. So if they lose it, as long as they've met the deadline for the next year, they can get it back up from GPA. And right now they're accepting super scores. So all of the ACT scores you see on the screen are super scores for Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. Speaking of super scores, you need to make sure your students ask every college what they're taking super scores for, if they're accepting them for scholarships, because every school is doing it differently. I think all except for, Alcorn and I want to say Delta State are the 2 schools in the public schools I've heard that are not super scoring for scholarships, but have your students double check that. Any other questions about Mississippi financial aid? Okay. We've got, skip that. this is an activity that I'm not going to have you guys do, but I want you to see that this is a really fun activity that I hope you do with your students. You're going to do it in the module for the paying for college. It's essentially, I'm going to give you a profile like these. You're going to use these two exactly, and you're going to award financial aid based off of these for them. So for example, Eager Elijah, because he submitted his scholarship November the 10th, and he's got an adjusted gross income of $25,000 for the past years, and he's got an EFC of 0. If he was in college, he would qualify for the HELP grant, for the Pell grant, and maybe some institutional aid as well. Last minute, Lindsay, because she missed the HELP grant deadline and she although has a 28 on the ACT, getting max Pell, she can't get MESG or MTAG. She doesn't have the ACT and she's getting max Pell. She would only be on federal aid. And so this is an activity that's in your lesson plans that is actually an assignment for y'all that you'll be awarding, but it's a great way to kind of present financial aid after you've told them all about these are the 4 sources into a way that they're like, oh, wow, I thought Lindsay could get MTAG. She's got a 28 on the ACT, but it's like, nope, she can't. She's got max Pell, or she missed the deadline. So this is how much aid she's going to get. One thing to note about this is most college will always award loans unless they know otherwise that the student is going to be paying. So if there's a $10,000 bill and the student's only getting $6,000 in Pell Grant, they're probably going to award $4,000 in loans until the school knows otherwise. And so that's something that will surprise your students a lot. All right, so here's some timelines. So we've talked a lot kind of about these areas. Now, what exactly should your students be doing when? This is a good timeline for your senior year. So your seniors, they should making sure that they're applying to college, that they're retaking the ACT if need be, that they have a high school resume, they are in communication with their recruiters, that they have developed those relationships, they've done campus visits, that kind of shadowing internships, kind of figuring out what do I want to do? Why do I want to go to the school? Does it have what I want to do? Net price calculator is required to be on every college's site. So we talked about that cost of attendance. Well, if you want to know a very specific number based off that student, that net price calculator on the website kind of does that EFC calculation with the cost of attendance, and it puts it together and it gives a student kind of a realistic number. Have them do their FAFSA, have them do the Mississippi Financial Aid, and make sure they do scholarships. If you're curious on what your juniors kind of need to be doing, they need to make sure that they're taking challenging coursework, that they are preparing for that ACT test that they're going to be offered in the spring. They can go ahead and practice essay writing ideas, because maybe they'll go ahead and have it written by the time they start their scholarship applications in August of next year. They can go ahead and be on recruiters' radars as well. And then campus visits are important, and a lot of times will be junior preview days. And then they want to make sure that they're documenting all of their successes, building that resume out, let them not forget anything. They can also do net price calculator because they're starting that college search. They can't do the FAFSA yet, but on our website is the EFC calculator, and it gives them an estimate of how much aid they'll need or be eligible for, and explore college options and research different scholarships. So I have just a few more slides. We're probably going to end early, but if y'all have any questions about this so far, let me know. Let me pull up to.
I have a question. I have quite a few students who maybe they're, well, like one in particular, her sister is raising her because her mom is deceased and they don't know where her dad is. So what would she file for her FAFSA?
So is her sister a legal guardian?
Yes.
Then she would be independent on the FAFSA.
Okay.
So she would only use herself as the student's information. But you have to make sure that it's guardianship and not custody, because custody is different in the space that if a parent came back into the picture, they could regain parental rights with custody. Guardianship is permanently changing parental rights. And that's why it specifically says on the FAFSA guardianship and not custody/guardianship.
Okay. Because I have several students like that. So I just wanted to.
As long as they have got guardianship. I've also got a lot of questions recently from the master teacher, from summer teachers, about this scenario. And this is something you need to know. If a student has lived with their mom their whole life, their mom recently passed away or has passed away since the age of 13, they could potentially say yes to the question that asks, has both your parents been deceased since the age of 13, if their dad is not listed on their birth certificate. So I usually ask the question, is your dad listed on your birth certificate? If they're like, I don't know who my dad is, or I have no relationship with him, I've never had one parent has never been in the picture at all. If that parent is not listed on the birth certificate, that actually qualifies as both parents being deceased because they don't have a second parent per the birth certificate. The FAFSA was very intrusive, if you couldn't tell from the last 2 seconds of conversation. And so just know that it's really not y'all's getting in their business. It's really y'all helping the student figure out whose info to use and just knowing what questions to ask to dig down to identify that. You can always fix the FAFSA. It can always be fixed. You can't mess it up. And y'all will not see their tax information if you do the IRS data retrieval. So if you're doing the FAFSA, if I'm doing it for Teresa, I won't know what her income is because I'm using IRS data retrieval and it masks every information. So if that's something that you're apprehensive about, I will tell you your students will benefit so much more from you just being willing to talk them through, explain it to them, help them with it, than the stresses of you knowing financial situation for maybe a peer or a friend, parents of a student. All right, so last thing is our Get to College website, as I showed you earlier, has a lot of great
Welcome
resources.
to the newly remodeled Get to College website. For students and families, we have many new areas. They can find out more about our Get to College centers across the state of Mississippi, find out more about what they should be doing each year as they plan for college, register for ACT workshops, check out college snapshots and compare college costs, find out how to pay for college through financial aid. For students who aren't quite sure about what they would like to do as far as a major, they can take our free career interest survey online. As an educator, we have many different options for you to take advantage of our resources. Counselors and educators can sign up for virtual workshops. You can also sign up for texting. Also, educators can take advantage of professional development. We have our dates listed on our website, as well as viewing other resources that we use as we counsel students. College and career readiness instructors also have access to tools and resources online.
All right. Additionally, we have, as I showed you earlier, a very robust tutorial tips for ACT, but our YouTube channel has so much, y'all. It is so much for you as an educator, but for your students. Spend some time, have your students watch them. If you're like, I don't know how to teach this, more than likely we have a video on our YouTube channel about it. All right. So we're meant to be there easier for you. And then we've got some things I wanted to talk to you about. This summer, we're going to be, if you're interested in getting ACT instructional training from ACT, we're going to be paying for some training from ACT to be ACT certified instructor. If you're interested in that, let me know. We've got FAFSA training. Y'all are going to go through that in College Academy. Get excited. I know you're pumped. And then Topic Tuesday is a webinar series that is specific to a topic around students. For example, last month we had the dream.us. If you work with a lot of undocumented students in your class or in your school, that's a great webinar that I can share with you that talked about how do you talk to undocumented students about college. Mississippi is a lockout state, so we do not have any aid for undocumented students. And in fact, if you have undocumented students in your class, they do not need to complete the FAFSA. They can't, they don't need to, they can't create an FSA ID. So you just need to be really sensitive if you know that you have an undocumented student population to be aware that they don't need to disclose their status unless they're willing to. And so some of the things around this class could make them in a spot where they have to disclose. And so kind of thinking through that is something that you may not have thought about before right now. And so we want to provide you these topics that I've never thought about how to support homeless students. We have a webinar about that. So we've got really specifics. They're live through the semester now and in the spring, and then we archive them on our YouTube channel. So if you're ever like, hey, I've got this question about it, I can probably find a YouTube tutorial from our archives on Topic Tuesday. All right, that's it. That's all I got. This is Get to College. This is pretty much units 3 and 4 that y'all have survived, you can contact any of us at any time if you are in an area where you know that you got a center. All the centers are super excited to support you, but also know that we are literally doing all of our things to, oh, I want to show you one last thing. I want to show you the lesson plans really quickly. You're going to review them, and please remember, I am not an educator, so I learned how to create and do lesson plans, and I hope that y'all find them helpful. So this is them and what they look like. We base them off of pretty much all of the subtopics in the units. And so they are Google compatible. And so it's going to give you kind of your prep materials in here on what you need to know, what you need to have available beforehand. There's some teacher prep, so maybe watching a webinar or whatever. And then all of these videos are embedded in here. It's going to give you activities that you can do. It's the script with the slides. So all of these are linked to the actual presentation that we've provided you from Get to College. So you can have this pulled up on the screen and just talk through the script that we've put in here for you to say, and then know that it links to a certain page in the CCR workbook. We've got graphics that you can put out. Yeah, so that's what we've created specifically for y'all. So hopefully you find it helpful. That's all I got.
Hey, I tell this story every time, Kirsten. Hey, y'all. But let me just tell you what happened to me. You know what story I'm about to tell. We've been doing this, like I said, for 5 years, and so I, in all my all-knowing power of all the things and all I've learned, last year I decided to complete the Fafsa for my daughter by myself because I was like, oh, I got this. Oh, I got this. Until I was almost in tears because I messed it up. And then I was like on the phone, I was like, Kirsten, this is the most embarrassing text I've ever sent in my life, but I just screwed it up. Like, what do I do? And she had to help me fix it. And so, yeah, it's just a thing. So don't hesitate to reach out to Get to College because it's overwhelming and confusing with the FAFSA and all the Get to College stuff for sure. So
I have a couple questions that have come through in the chat. Sorry, I didn't have it pulled up. The lesson plans are going to be embedded in your modules. And so you're going to go through the module that's a college search and transition. It is in there. And then I'm going to share the full Google folder with y'all. And so you'll have to review each one. So it's in Canvas. And then the household income for help is adjusted gross for parents for 2 years ago. So it's adjusted gross. And no, underwater basket weaving is not a major. It's kind of a little bit of a mock on students thinking that it's that. You'll see it in the activity that the school gives a scholarship for those majoring in underwater basket weaving, which is an example that there's sometimes schools that do give major, although not a typical one found.
And I want to expand on that. I think it was Heidi who asked the question about the help grant, the income level. It's on adjusted gross income. So here's what that means. Your gross income is what your contract says, right? So if it says you make $42,500, that's your gross income. Your adjusted gross income is lower than that. So if you're thinking right now, well, I don't qualify for that, or somebody that I know doesn't qualify for the help grant, your adjusted gross is lower because it's adjusted, just dependent on a lot of factors. But just know that if you're anywhere near that income threshold, you probably or might meet that adjusted gross level. And it's based on what you, so on your tax returns from 2 years out. So yeah, but it's not your gross income, it's lower. So that's helpful. So, okay. Let's see. Yeah, he said all of our incomes are gross. Yeah. Okay, Kirsten, do you have anything else for us?
That's it.
Okay, good. Well, hey, on behalf of Mississippi Council on Economic Education, Get to College, me, Kirsten, all the people, all the things, thank you for doing this. I know it's a long day. It's on Zoom. We're excited for y'all to work through the course. Remember that we've created all this for you to use in your classroom. So that's what we want you to do. We covet your feedback, your polite feedback for sure, but we want it honest. So if you find a typo or you find an error, you find something that just doesn't work, make sense, please, please, please reach out and let us know. We know some of you, like I said, overachievers are going to be blazing through it. And we really depend on you to email us and let us know, okay, this was wrong, because we can fix it for everybody else coming through. if there's an issue for something. So please reach out via email. I feel certain we'll see several of you on our Tuesday office hours, especially this Tuesday as we get kicked off. The class has to be completed by January 31st. The professional developments in Module B have to be completed by the end of December, and that is so Get to College and NextGen has time to award certificates that they can then email to you that then you can upload into the course. But you have a good long time to complete it, and you'll be just fine if you pace yourself throughout. So with that being said, thank y'all. If you want to stick around because you have any questions or concerns, Kirsten and I will stay here until we get all of those answered. But if you are ready to go, you are free to go, and we will see you soon.
Great to meet y'all.
Miss Teresa, I have a question.
Okay.
So I privately chat messaged you
Okay.
about my situation this morning. And should I wait to hear from you before I continue, or what should I do?
Yeah, I would. I've got to send a list to Mississippi Council on Economic Education, and they also will have this recording. So I think what they do is go back and get on the recording and see who was here throughout
They'll be able to get a report that they can pull a report in Zoom that says like the time that people were in.
Mm-hmm. So the orientation, and they're pretty adamant about it. The orientation is mandatory for the whole day. Now, what that means that you came to the afternoon, I'm not sure. We're going to have to wait till Monday. And I would reach out to them and ask them. But it's ultimately
you say for me to ask? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And who am I asking?
Jessica Lewis, the one who sent you the emails.
Oh, okay. Okay.
About the orientation and about joining the Canvas course.
Okay.
She'll be able to answer that for you. Yeah.
Is it possible to get the recording of the morning session?
We will have a recording of the orientation, but I'm not sure that watching the recording satisfies being here. I know that there were, 5, 6, 7 people who at the end of the week last week ended up emailing saying, I can't be there. Can I watch a recording? And they had to withdraw for the course at the last minute, and then are able to join again in the summer because they couldn't be here today. So my assumption is that if you weren't here the whole time, you're not staying, but I do not know that for sure. That is up to Mississippi Council on Economic Education.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, but email them on Monday morning, and they'll be, or I mean, you can email them whenever, but they won't be back at work till Monday morning. So.
All right, awesome. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Yes, you too.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions?
May have been something I misheard or something, but is it something that's due by tonight?
No, not that I know.
I think what you probably heard is that we're not opening the other modules until midnight tonight.
Got
so
you.
We're making you take a break. Nothing is due. You just have to not do anything for a little bit because it's not open until midnight. I think that's probably what you heard.
Okay. Okay.
Well, you can get in module A.
Yeah.
Complete module A, and then technically B would open up. So you could do stuff.
Right.
But the meat of the course doesn't open until midnight tonight. Like the other stuff doesn't open until midnight tonight. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a question?
Now you said module B has to be completed by, you said December 31st?
Well, that's a twofold question. Module B, if you look at it, those are the next gen professional developments. And then also it'll be Get to College's College Academy. Isn't that right, Kirsten?
Yeah.
That will be added in there as well. They have to be completed by December 31st-ish. And so let me just tell you the way that plays out. It takes Get to College and or Next Gen, just depending on, like if you complete that over Christmas, they're not working over Christmas. And so it would take them a little bit to get your completion certificates to you. Okay. And so December 31st is the safest date. Now, if you complete it after December 31st, you just run the risk of not having the completion certificate in on time. But for those assignments, if you look at it, if you click on it, I can share my screen if you need me to. But what you're doing is you're completing the professional development, and then you'll have a completion certificate and you're uploading the completion certificate in Canvas.
Oh,
Yes. So the completion certificate's not due till the end of the course, but you're not going to have it till a week or two after you've actually done the thing. That's why we say do it by December 31st, just to avoid all confusion, and you'll have your completion certificate in time.
Okay.
You remember the completion certificate debacle from
Yes.
the summer years?
I made mine automated. The College Academy is automated. So as soon as they
Oh,
finish
does
it,
it?
it gets it. Yeah, they download it immediately. I was like, I'm not doing that. I learned
Yeah,
that
well,
the hard
that's
way.
good. Well, yeah. Well, I see hers is better. So there you go.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has, I think there's only a couple of us on there. Ms. Murtis, do you have a question?
I do not. I was just staying on to listen to other questions.
Yeah, I don't blame you. We might tell some good stuff on here, huh? Okay, well, with that, if we don't have any more, and I'm still, gosh, Kirsten, do you know, is it Vishnu? Vishnu. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I'm doing good. Okay, let me, all right.
Want me? Oh, I heard you call my name.
I was trying to say it right.
Oh, okay. All right.
Still practicing. I'm still practicing. Okay, well, you have a good night and the rest of your weekend.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
This thing is down here. How do I